Welcome to the love of books, movies, and happiness. My name's April, and today we're doing a book review on a new book, or at least within the last 6 months or so, being a new book, I believe. It's how my library works. Their new books are last 6 months to a year. It is by Meghan Church, and it's called The Girls We Sent Away. It's a very pretty cover, which I admit you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but that is what drew my attention first. I happened to pick it up while I was checking out other books and decided that the story sounded interesting. This is a story, however, that was not a subject I am familiar with, and I'm not sure that everyone else who would read this is familiar with it either. Some of you might be. Some of the older generation may know what the baby scoop era is, but for me, and I'm sure for many others, that's not a term that we've heard often. So when I was reading the back of this book and I seen it mention the baby scoop era, I had to do a little bit of research into what I was getting into before I started reading the book. So for those who do not know, the baby scoop era refers to the time from 1945 to, and I took notes to make sure I wouldn't get the times wrong, to 1973. This is a time when World War II had just ended. The soldiers were coming back home. But back then, women weren't supposed to get pregnant outside of marriage. That was like a big social taboo subject of good girls didn't get pregnant outside of marriage. It just wasn't allowed. Not that it didn't happen, because it did. You know, teenagers being teenagers, hormones, young love, or just plain rebellion, or other not as good reasons. All things can lead to pregnancy. But back then, there were certain ways of dealing with a unwed mother who ends up pregnant. And this book kind of refers to around that time. This is more set in the 60s, around the time of when they first set foot on the moon. But there's still the whole social taboo of if you're a good girl, you don't get pregnant. But for those that do, for whatever reason, the solutions weren't that great. You had the ones who tried home remedies to try to stop the pregnancies. Not really usually successful, depending on how soon you started it or even what it was. Or you had what was called maternity homes. There was other names for them as well. But a maternity home was usually ran by a house mother who took in girls in the last 3 months of their pregnancy, usually, when they were most obvious on being pregnant, for a price. Either the family paid for it, or in some cases, the girls would do chores around the home, help make crafts, that kind of thing, to pay the house mother for supporting them. While in these homes, the girls are not allowed to use their full names, or in some cases, they were told to make up names to help keep them concealed and keep the family's names from being tarnished by them having gotten pregnant. Once they gave birth to their child, they were usually required to sign the child over and give away their parental rights so that the child could be put up for adoption. Now, not all mothers wanted to sign away their children, but in some cases, most of the time, the house mothers developed clever ways of getting the mothers to sign away their children. Because back then, if you were an unwed mother, as far as they were concerned, you didn't have any say in what happened. You were essentially there to give up your child to a family that had both a mother and a father and were respectable. The girl would then be sent back home to try to pick up her life as it was and fit back within society's ideas of what she should be doing. Whether or not that was a good thing for the mother, the maternity homes didn't really care. It was essentially a way for them to make a little money from giving the babies to parents looking for them. Don't get me wrong, adoption is a beautiful thing, but back then some of the methods used were underhanded and potentially harmful, depending on the situation. In this book of The Girls We Sent Away, we are in North Carolina in the 1960s, where we meet Loraine Delfort. She comes from a good family, not like a super rich or powerful family, but a well-respected, good family. She's the only daughter of the family. Her dad has an important job, and her mother is, of course, a housewife. She's been raised with a comfortable income setting to where she's never struggled. And up until the events in this book, she has never doubted that, her family loves her and that she can convince her father to let her do whatever she wants. Not saying she's a spoiled brat, by all means, she's not. She's just never had an interaction where she has to question anything. Loraine has dreams of going to space. Even though at this time period, women don't usually get into the field of science a whole lot. There are, at this point, women scientists in NASA and other places. It's just that for her social setting, women usually, after school, fall in love, get married, become housewives. That's kind of the plan that she's expected to follow, even though she has dreams. She convinces her father to let her be a lifeguard, which at the time, lifeguarding is still is still a more or less guy's field. But she uses that summer job to help kind of get a little bit of income towards making some money for going to college in the next year. Well, Loraine has a boyfriend that she's been going pretty steady with for the last 2 years. He's getting ready to go to college himself. And as much as she's enjoying spending time with him, after family dinners and such, they'll go out on dates and that, and she's enjoying it, at the same time, she's excited for the idea of college and just getting some space and figuring out what she wants to do exactly. She knows that she wants to go to the moon, and she has to get good grades for that. She expects to be a valedictorian at her school. But there's something that happens that's going to change all of that for her. The closer they get to her boyfriend going to college, the more he gets antsy around her. She can't help but notice. Well, finally, about a week before he goes to college, he takes her out on a special date in which he convinces her that he gives her a ring, not on her ring finger. She won't let him do that. She puts it on her right hand. It is just a promise of things for the future. And at which point he manages to convince her to sleep with him. Shouldn't be the end of the world. However, as can happen, if the right circumstances are met, hormones, everything, the timing all works out just right, she ends up finding herself pregnant. Which for her isn't her first realization. She ends up First, she thinks that she's just tired, just not feeling great, probably coming down with something. As the further along she gets and she starts to realize that there is something wrong, she kind of goes into denial a little bit, because girls like her don't get pregnant before marriage. When she finally accepts that there's no doubt that she is in fact pregnant, she turns to her mother, which should be, in most cases, is who you would turn to, is your mom. Well, her mother's response to all of this is not ideal. Finds a discreet doctor who does a full examination on her and confirms that she is pregnant and how far along she is, and then gives the mother a pamphlet on a maternity home, assuring her that there's complete privacy and respect towards the family name, and no one will know whose family she came from. There's no real information in this pamphlet on what happens, just that she's supposed to go there in the last 3 months of her pregnancy until after she gives birth. The rest of the story then follows Loraine as she goes to this maternity home and quickly finds out exactly what's expected of her. We follow her as she goes through the mental trouble of accepting that she's pregnant, dealing with the realities of being an unwed and pregnant young woman in society at that time, and just trying to adjust to being in somewhere other than her own home. We also follow her journey as she starts to realize that maybe she wants to keep the baby, maybe she doesn't. She's not sure. I find this book to be a very good book. I actually will give this a 4 out of 5 star rating. It is not a great book by any means, but it is good. It's well written. Characters are definitely believable. It's clearly well researched. It does not have an expected happy ending, which in something like this, that really doesn't surprise me. The author does a very good job of making you feel what Loraine is going through. Her confusion, her anguish, and then just her wants versus what society is telling her, as well as the aftermath of everything. I find within this book that there are several villains. And it's not a typical book where you have good guy versus bad guy. However, I find in here there are several. The person in charge of the maternity home, the doctor, society itself, the boyfriend. They're all in a way a piece of a villain that all affect Loraine in different ways. And following her journey as she tries to figure out how she's dealing with them and accept everything that's happening, leaves one sad for her, and yet at the same time makes you really think about what it was like back then for young women. And compared to today's society, where being young and unwed and pregnant is not as much of a horrible thing. I'm not saying it's great, and there's not still backlash from society, but it's more common. Whether that's good or bad, I'm honestly not one to say. But it makes you just really focus on the way things were to the way they are now, and just what women from 45 to 1973, what they went through. From what I've researched, a lot of these people that ran the maternity homes, the way that they coerced the girls into giving up their babies for adoption, was unethical, and sometimes illegal, and always gave the mothers the idea that they had no real choice in any of it. Like it was somehow their fault for what happened, and they had no say in anything. So it makes you glad that these days there are more options and more say out there. And also makes you aware of why certain people from older generations have the attitudes that they have. So if I see another book by Meghan Church on my library's shelves, I will definitely be checking it out to see if she does as good of a job in any of her other books that she did in this one. So if you're looking for a story that doesn't necessarily have a happy ever after ending, but will make you think, is based on true events and well written, and has a character that you can emotionally connect to, then I definitely recommend reading The Girls We Sent Away by Meghan Church. Alright guys, if you liked this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter, on Instagram. I'm also on Rumble. Check me out on any of those, you never know what I'm posting. And please let me know if there's a book similar to this one, or even a completely different book that you think I would enjoy. Leave a comment and let me know what you would like to see me review next. The only things that I won't read are books that include abuse or rape in them. And the abuse, it's more books that have highly detailed scenes of abuse. But if you know of a book that doesn't have those two subjects in it, but you think I might enjoy reading, or you'd just like to see me review, leave a comment and let me know. I will happily look for it at my local library and try and get my hands on a copy and do a review on it. Till next time, guys, keep reading.